Hi, this is just a quick announcement that I am adding to the front of this video. Just to remind you, as long as you see this little prelude to the video here, I am still in the mode of trying to raise the money to get a container sent from Haines, Alaska by barge and freighter and truck all the way to Tbilisi, Georgia. And I'll need thousands of dollars to do this. In my actual fundraising videos, you'll see exactly how much. But I can't do it without help. I just need your help. So if you feel like contributing, please feel free to do so. Links down below to PayPal or GoFundMe, and that's particularly good if you want a tax-deductible receipt. One thing I'll also mention is I will be playing Georgian music during this video at different times because, among other reasons, apart from the fact it's just beautiful, if you wish for to get some of this Georgian music yourself, I have about 700 files of it, and it's obscure, rare stuff. And if you give $50 or more, I will send you 50 files of great Georgian music. If you give me 100, I'll send you 100, etc. So, thanks for beginning the video. And now let's talk to Tayo, who is from originally Nigeria by way of the UK. And we had a great conversation about music. Tayo.
And I grew up in as far as the music and films in the prime of my youth are sort of the things that you look at and say, nope, that's rubbish. That's gone too far. So I get a little bit triggered once in a while when you point. I think the most I've been triggered was, I don't know which video, but you said something like, I think it was Nirvana. You said that was the last great song. That's the last good song.
We're going to devote our energies to sports and gardening, all the cultural pursuits as far as they're concerned. In fact, we're going to put the goons to sleep. Meanwhile, we dig.
Greetings and welcome to the Anadromous. This is Burn Power coming to you on a beautiful blue sky, crisp autumn air. It's the fall season here. The leaves are indeed falling. And today what we've got is I've been in the middle of my fundraiser to try to raise the money to get my container from Alaska, fill my container with my library, and bring it here to Haines. And you'll hear references to that. But while you think about whether you'd like to contribute, then I would also like to ask you to listen. I had a very good conversation with someone who came on board during the fundraiser, the first part of it, a guy named Tayo. And he explains where he's from and why he decided to come on and talk to me. And we had a fascinating conversation about music. He started off saying, kind of like, what's this thing about Nirvana being the last great music? And I explained the subtleties of what I was saying to him, among other things. Obviously, it's not a short video. Most of this was conversation about music, and I think you'll find it fascinating. And also you'll see references to Georgian music, and I explain why that is during the video. And if the prelude before Tayo speaks is still on this video, you can go ahead and contribute to the fundraising campaign. Links below, and GoFundMe or PayPal. And yeah, that's all I'm going to say for now. And meanwhile, let's enter the conversation. It was a good one. Okay, so we have Teo online. Is it Teo or Tayo?
I enjoy the fact that you keep going back and forth between Teo
Well,
and Tayo.
because different cultures would pronounce it differently. Here it would be Tayo. Yeah.
I'm
Where are you
Nigerian,
from?
and I'm Nigerian, so it's Tayo, but
Uh-huh.
I live in England where I'm called Teo, so
Right. So
either
you're
works
used to
for me.
both. Yeah, that's cool.
Exactly.
So tell me about yourself and what's on your mind. So,
Uh, well, I could have asked the questions in the chat, but I wanted to come on and
oh,
speak
that's
to you
great.
face to face. Mainly firstly to say just thank you for the amazing work that you've been putting out. I discovered you when you did the Randos conversation with Paul Vanderklay, which
Right,
was sort of like a genius move of having that conversation and then leading everyone to the channel,
right.
and it wasn't disappointing. I think the How We Got Here series is still one of the best work this little corner, whatever that means,
Right.
has put out. So yeah, thank you for that.
So
I
when
Sorry, go
did
on.
you discover the channel?
3 years ago.
Okay, so you've been
I
around for
think
a while.
yeah, I'm a notorious lurker on a lot of YouTube channels, and I struggle to leave a comment because I start typing and then I change my mind and then I just give up halfway through because
Right,
I don't.
right.
Yeah, but I did leave a comment once, just thanking you, for. I think I phrased it something like "Thank you for helping to model a way to reconstruct the faith after deconstructing," something like that. And you gave
Mm-hmm.
a brilliant reply, which was go and build well, which I thought
Yeah,
was just apt. Um,
right.
so yeah, I've been around the channel for quite a while. I find my my engagements with your channel both enriching and also very frustrated.
What's the frustrating part?
uh, uh, Firstly, I'm 28 years old, so
Mm-hmm.
my worldview is shaped by the culture that I've been, obviously, as everyone else. And I grew up in as far as the music and films in the prime of my youth
Mm-hmm.
are sort of the things that you look at and say, nope, that's rubbish. That's gone too far. So I get a little bit triggered once in a while when you point. I
I
think
I
the most I've been
understand.
triggered, the most I've been triggered was, I don't know which video, but you said something like, I think it was um Nirvana. You said that was the last great song. That's the last good song to
No,
come out.
not last good song, but and it's easy to understand that. It's really that's the end of the idea of rock music as revolution. Because after that, you do find more rock music going into the aughts. But what changes is, first of all, a lot of the rock music at the end of the '90s, you start getting commercialized forms like pop punk and even Marilyn Manson. I consider a pretty commercialized form of music, and he's on Universal Records. He's on, I think, Interscope, which is a part of Universal Records, and it is the largest music organization on earth. So it's not
Yeah,
small stuff. So he was criticizing, the church and the family and the police and all of this, but he was never criticizing the record company he was on, who has made a monopoly of all of these things. But then on the other side, underground, you have all this stuff happening, but for instance, the music for, we'll say, the college market, the university market, immediately goes into this other kind of group. So you're getting groups like Tortoise or Pedro the Lion or Neutral Milk Hotel. All music I love, but what it is it's now in a kind of a, what should we call it? It's in a it's kind of like the music doesn't have any sense of accomplishing anything. It's more like the music you would make after you arrived at the scene of I don't know, a disaster. And so what you're doing now is you don't want to get your hopes up. You don't want to believe anymore. Now, there are different kinds of music that go on, and obviously there's been plenty.
That right though? Isn't that right? Isn't that reaction from the artist right? If what you're getting from them is this sense of the music you make, uh, when you arrive at the scene of a disaster, does
Right.
that not sum up the 21st century? Is that
Oh,
not what
exactly,
we?
exactly. But what it is the knife in the heart, in a sense, was the Kurt Cobain movement, because it also that during that year they made an interesting documentary about Sub Pop, and I think it was just called Hype, and that documentary dealt with the fact that even the Sub Pop label, which was behind Nirvana and behind a lot of this, almost all the Seattle stuff, they had sold out by the time of Nirvana had become really popular. And, Kurt Cobain singing stuff like Rape Me was also him just going like, this is doing something to me. And quite obviously, that's what he really felt. So actually, I've been kind of looking back over the music of the Odds, and I see some underground strata of music that is quite fascinating, and I want to do a video on it sometime. I might do it at the new Anadromous channel because I think it'd be better for that channel. But what's interesting is that there's still good music, but again, it's almost all on a different kind of a level. As someone said about jazz, for instance, jazz ceased to be dominant at a certain point, and a lot of innovation kind of petered out in the 70s and into the 80s. And as someone said, it ceased to be a music of origination and started to be a music of interpretation. And I think we can say that something similar happened to rock music. That rock music ceased to be this thing that was producing these new movements. And for instance, there is a video of the last rock hit. I can't even remember because it's such a bad song. About 2011, the last actual rock type of hit on the radio. It was some guy doing a very commercialized version of, say, Pearl Jam or something like that. Actually, I've been recently reading this book, We Never Learn, and this is actually kind of my history in New York, but also, and it's We Never Learn by this guy, Eric Davidson, who was in this rather crazy band called the New Bomb Turks, and it's subtitled The Gunk Punk Undergut, and it's 1988 to 2001. And what's interesting about this is none of the music that there was only a few bands in this whole scene that ever rose to the surface, like the John Spencer Blues Explosion or the Muffs or whatever. But even those were like low level. They never had a Nirvana. And in fact, these people saw themselves as not being part of that whole scene. Although I would reinterpret it as saying, oh, yeah, you absolutely were part of the 90s moment. And you were loud, you were very noisy, but it was based more on 60s garage rock and other forms like that, the Stooges and stuff like that. But what's great about this book, I just finished this book called God's Forever Family that is about the Jesus movement. And I'm reading through this book, and I was a kid and got involved with that. And so I see names. I go like, oh, I know that person. I know that person. It's the same with this book from the 90s. This was wasn't my only scene then, but it was certainly something, and the guy, Eric Davidson, I didn't meet him, but I certainly went to at least one New Bomb Turk show, and he's referring to other crazy kind of acts. But these were all acts that were underground. And the final thing in that, the only group that really came out of that was the White Stripes. They were the Stripes and the White Stripes. And even the White Stripes, they had a certain momentum. They may have been the last great rock band. There's a lot more going on in rap and obviously EDM and all the rest of that. And just to be fair, I just ordered 2 compilations of rap music from the last 20 years or so. And
I'll be very, very curious to hear your review of them.
And also I picked up a double CD set of reggaeton music. because I thought, okay, this is something I was there with the dance hall stuff and all the ragamuffin and
Yeah,
all that. I could see this as the Latin variation on that kind of stuff with more rap and everything like that. So I'm saying,
yeah.
okay, let's pick up on some stuff that just
That's
needed time to
that
develop.
that leads nicely to one of the other questions I had for you, which was how your well, it was more specifically your YouTube content and how you decipher what you take in, who you subscribe to, what videos you watch,
Or what I watch.
and how much
Yeah.
you're pushing against the algorithm and how much you're letting the algorithm bring
Yeah,
things to
it's
you.
tough. It's tough. One thing is I have now 5 different channels. And so what I do is I have things quarantined onto each channel. So all my music and movie stuff, all the channels that I follow are now just on the Anadrome. This is, obviously you're not going to see this. But when I come up to that and check that, I go, okay, this is happening here, this is happening here. This is what the critical drinker is saying. This is what Rick Beato is talking about, blah, 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 blah. And I've had different kinds of people. And then after a while, I go, okay, I've heard enough of this person and go on like this. Matty Ball, spent a little time with him. They're just these different people, music and art and film in particular on that channel. And on this channel, I follow more of the idea people. So the people, although what I've noticed is there are very few people that I'm actively following now that I was following, say, 3 years ago. A lot of them, and what I've noticed is the combination of the pandemic, the Ukraine war, and now the Israel thing has really created these weird propaganda divides among people who are more cohesive at a certain point. So, and sometimes I just say, okay, you think that, great. I tend, people will say, how can you be, whatever about Ukraine? I go like, it's because I'm living in Georgia and the Russian army is 70 kilometers from me. That's why. So
I'm very curious. Because you've been engaged in culture for decades, like longer than
yeah,
I've been alive. But you're also engaging with this new medium, this online world of engaging with
yeah.
arts, YouTube videos.
Yeah.
What are some of the wisdoms that you got from collecting in real life and collecting physical things that you're applying to the online world of navigating this online?
I save videos. If there's a good video, I save it. So if someone just I would have to look on my channel here, but I don't feel like it. Well, I just played a Georgian song, and that I saved. But not only do I save that kind of thing, I also save something like what is it? Any sort of, like, if there's an event, I start to save the videos around that event. So I have tons of Ukraine war stuff. I have less Israel stuff. I save, for instance, at a certain point you realize, okay, there's so many people who have detransitioned, so many people who have done this. So, you can collect crazy people doing stuff all day. And I have enough to prove a point. Enough so that, for instance, I'm in Georgia. And I have a friend named Lasha, and he has a doctorate in philosophy, and he's going for another one now. And he teaches philosophy at the local school. But we get together and just talk. He finds me fascinating because he's never heard anyone say the things that I've heard. It's just like, but I've found this before. People are going like, what are those books you're recommending, Bernd? Because they're all over the place. They don't follow one particular philosophical or political stream. And but we talked a little bit. I was trying to explain to them how crazy some of the things in the West had gotten, and I was trying to explain to him the transgender kind of stuff, because it's not really here yet. Hopefully it won't quite make it here, but there are bits and pieces of it are here. And the way I explain it to people is like, you guys here are on one side of a hill. And on that side of the hill, you're saying, we want more freedom for the LGBTQ community. We want more of women to have more of a role and such. And I said, great, fine. We're on the other side of this hill. And what's happened is these things now, what looked like freedom and had aspects of freedom, now look very different to us. And so we're raising questions. So I said to him, for instance, a simple question like, what is a woman, will get you into a hornet's nest worth of problems. And so he says, well, I don't quite understand. I said, fine, next week we'll get together. And I showed him about an hour's worth of YouTube videos. And by the time he was done, his head was reeling. And, I'm showing him, drag queens in schools. I'm showing him, people and the whole pronoun insanity. I'm showing him, people getting canceled for this and that. I'm just showing him all this stuff. And at the end, he goes, maybe it's good that we are behind. I said, exactly. And that's why I'm here. It's because it is a bit out of time. Because they had a war in the 90s, because they were locked in the Soviet Union for so long, because they were in real poverty in the odds, it's only been in the last 12, 15 years that they've been able to, now you see everyone with a phone of some sort. And, they do have their computers. They do have video games, although Georgians don't have enough time to play video games. I've never met a geek here, someone who lives behind the video game screen. You don't meet people. I've met young people, and they're not talking about the Marvel comic universe. They're not talking about Minecraft. They're not talking about Star Wars. They'll go. We'll get those movies here, Star Wars or MCU, and they'll walk out and they'll just say much like I did in the 1970s when I first saw Star Wars. I go, oh, that was pretty good. There were some things I was a little bit, whatever. It was a good movie. I enjoyed it. Whereas that's what they'll say. They either liked it or they didn't like it. They won't go nuts about it.
Because they're more religious? There's still more of a religious thing, so they're not finding stories to become.
It's not simply that, although that plays a big element in. They also do certain things culturally that maintain their traditions. For instance, whenever I talk to Georgians about, I said, basically, Georgia grew up at the same time as wine cultivation. And most people say that Georgians were the first people to ferment grapes. That's what the evidence says. So basically, as long as people have been sitting around these tables or whatever and having toast to wine, there have been Georgians of some sort in this area. And they still do that. And when they do that, particularly at the more formal supras, they're called, what they'll do is they will hold on a minute. Okay. What they will do is that they will have a what can I say? They'll have a they still do the toast. They sing together at that point. They do a lot of traditional things during that time. So I think that. And there's also all sorts of other aspects of Georgia. My big moment came for me the first year I was here. And I used to live in New York City. And I lived there for 16 years. So, there's a zone in New York City. It's the subway. There's a zone right on the corner of where the metro or the tube or whatever it is shows up. It's that little, thing, the gap you're supposed to mind. But it's like, don't get too close to the train as it comes. But in New York, for instance, since the beginning of this year, I heard this in the middle of the summer, 39 people had been pushed in front of subway cars.
Yeah,
and I remember having this moment when I was getting a little close, and it was a good amount of people on the platform. And then I suddenly had my New York brain came back to me and said, oh, I better watch out. Then I looked at people on the platform, and I looked at all their faces. I could just tell none of these people are going to push me in. And I started thinking about it. It's like I would see old men and women begging on the street, but I would never see crazy people begging on the street the way I would in New York City. And in fact, the more I started thinking about it, and in fact, 5 years later, I'm saying, okay, I think I've seen 5 crazy people on the street. There may be a couple of extras since the Russians.
One a year.
but that would be a walk around the block in New York. So, and I thought, why? What is the answer here? And the answer is that everyone here knows where their family is. And they live over there, or if, maybe their relatives live in a little village, and they are still connected. And if you know that your family is nearby, and your cousins and your aunts, it's not just your nuclear family, but it's your extended family, you're not going to do the kind of things that we would do in New York, because people come from all over the country to be in New York, but they come by themselves. They're not connected to their families. And
I'm sure the family name still means something in Georgia as well, whereas in New York, that's not a thing.
And in that, they are blessedly behind. So
yeah, like I said, I grew up in Nigeria. I moved to the UK when I was 12 years old, so I lived a significant amount of my childhood in Ibadan, which is southeast of Nigeria, in a sort of, it felt like it felt like a barrack, but it's a settlement for the railway workers. And my uncle, who I lived with, worked for the railways. And what that meant was there was a strong community of not just family, but workmates. All of the husbands usually go to different states for work, and it's the women that run the community, and they all know each other. And it literally takes a village, because any woman's got the right to discipline a child that's misbehaving.
I understand.
That sort of reinforces the thing. And I talked to my friend back home now, and she laments how all of that's disappearing. It's there's a rush to become as westernized as quickly as possible.
Yeah, and I was just talking with someone a couple of days ago. It was Daejin, who is Korean, but he lives in Florida now, and we were talking about how much this alienation has come to Korea. And the truth is, all you need is two things. You need a cell phone, smartphone, and what was the other thing? You need that, and you need, just the alienation of, people fragmenting. And that's enough to, the smartphone by itself just separates people. People think it brings you together, but it doesn't. I'm going to pause this right here. I'm not going to dive away from here, but I just want to remind everyone what we're doing here is we are raising money to help get my rather large library here from Alaska. And right now we are working on trying to get the $6,000 freighter cost. How many people are listening? About 12, 13 people. And I'm with Tayo. I'm going to say that. I want to be cool. But right now I need another $4,905 to get to the amount I need to get the freighter from Seattle, Washington to Poti. And we've been doing pretty good, and but I could use a little more. So if anyone gives more than $50 and wants some Georgian music, you will get 50 files of music that's really hard to find. And if you find you like that. So I am going to... Yes.
Just that if you're an artist, if you're a filmmaker, for example, I think that's a good investment, at least.
Yeah, I think so. So I'm going to come back to you in a minute. I'm just going to play one more Georgian song here. Actually, this is the original version of the song I played earlier, the Trio of Girls. But this is actually the version which was done by the Archimandrite Seraphim Bitkaribi from Syria, whose church is exiled here because of the Syrian war. And this is the same song, Psalm 50, but his version is really much more intense. So let's listen to that. Then I'll be back to you, Teo, and I'm going to see what's happening on the questions. So hang on.
Приветствую вас, мои дорогие украинцы. Накануне Великого Поста мне бы хотелось пожелать вам мира в душе, здоровья в теле, стойкости в вере. Украина – это та страна, которая для меня очень близка. Практически юность моя прошла там, и там я многому научился. И в Киеве дорога моя как раз привела меня к Богу. Поэтому сегодня хочу для вас исполнить песнопение 50-го псалма на арамейском языке. И желаю вам радоваться во двух мирах. Люблю вас, мои дорогие украинцы.
Yeah, we were talking about family, and we were talking about the alienation that's setting in. And
The dominant
there's
side.
been various kinds of alienation for a while, obviously. But I think the smartphone and the connection to this global thing has really created some issues we've never faced before, which is why I emphasize the physical. I emphasize, the presence of people, the presence of nature, the presence of actual things, and finding a way to get us connected. People want to change the environment, and yet they're not even connected to it. So, yeah.
I was just thinking, partly inspired by a lot of the things you've been talking about, that I would love a burn power breakdown of the record companies and their influence on the direction music took.
Yeah. Well, it's odd. I see so much. A lot of people don't understand. And I remember in New York City when I lived there, about 1989, I had a couple of friends who were doing something that was a cross between rap and reggae, and it was a group called Unity 2. I knew both these guys. The one guy was from Haiti, Lionel, and the other guy, Sean, was from Boston, and they were kind of coming in on the early wave of the neo ska movement, but they were taking it in a different direction. And one day they came in and they said to me, "Yeah, Island Records wants to sign us," and I said, "On the basis of what?" Yeah, and I wasn't really happy for them because I'd worked in the music business one way or another for about 8 years at that point. And I knew what that meant is that they were essentially going to be a tax write-off for them because it was all based on one song. And I said, yeah, you guys don't even have a following yet. You've got one song. And so they were told to get together an album's worth of material. And you can imagine, they're not touring around. They're not doing anything. They had friends in some of the early neo-ska bands like the Toasters. But they're not, they don't have a following. They're just, and I'm just sitting there going, you guys. And I had other friends who worked on the album with them, and they just said it was kind of a crazy thing. And of course, they disappeared like a rock. Now, of course, things are totally different today with Spotify and what's going on. And there's the great quote by Hunter Thompson. You know the quote? He says there's the music industry is, he says, I think, a long, shallow trench. It's filled with hustlers and criminals and all these terrible things. And then he says, and then there's a dark side. So, yeah. But
my limited experience with record companies, that sounds about right.
Well, the thing is that they're counting on the fact that you have limited experience with them, which is, I'm actually, I've been finally have said to myself, because of all the stuff with Taylor Swift lately, I said, okay, I'm going to deal with this. And I'm planning on releasing a fairly in-depth video. Probably the long version will be here, but the shorter version will be on the Anadromous. And dealing with who is this Taylor Swift person. And it makes my head hurt. It's just, there's so many weird aspects to it. But I think I will be able to say something intelligent by that time. And because I went and watched the movie, and I'm in Tbilisi, Georgia, not Athens, Georgia, not Atlanta, Georgia, but I'm in Tbilisi, Georgia, and there are young Georgian teenage girls dancing in the aisles. And I'm sitting there going, what is going on here? and it's like, it was like sold out for a month. And it's girls going back over and over, and it's still playing. And I'm just saying, what is, why is this happening? But then I realized also 10 years ago, such a thing would not have happened here. They were not connected to the big stream of the world yet. And then the concert itself made me. Yeah, exactly. That. the computer, the smartphone. The concert itself made me, okay, wait a minute, somebody wants on, or no, someone wants to give me money.
You were telling the story. I remember this one. You remember the story of your friends and their record label, and you were telling them you had one song.
The Unity 2, I think it is. They were Unity 2, because they were essentially. But like I said, they just dropped like a rock from the ocean. And after that, I met a lot of people throughout the 90s in New York. I knew lots of musicians in the 90s.
And Taylor Swift.
And then there's Taylor Swift. And what's happening with her? I've decided she presents herself like a goddess in concert. And then she presents herself like this just normal girl in interviews. And where is the truth? Who is she really? So what I'm calling it right now is, at the moment, I don't think I'll use this whole name. I'll definitely use the part, Who is Taylor Swift? But the subtitle is going to be A Tale of Two Taylors. But that sounds kind of funny. So, and there's probably more than two. For instance, there's definitely a person we're never seeing, and it's the person who is really good with money. And this person is kept way out of sight. I mean, we see she's challenged the music industry. Somehow she manages to get her teen followers to buy phonograph turntables and buy her vinyl. And there's a really funny story about that. Some Gen Z kid buys a turntable, then buys the Taylor albums, and some of them have like 3 vinyls on the new editions she's doing of her old music. And 2 of them, like if you know anything about vinyl, you know that the best sound quality comes from a 12-inch, 45 RPM record. So she put 2 12-inch 45s with really good sound quality on there. And someone left a comment going like, I don't know why she's trying to sing like an old man. It's supposed to be 33 RPM. But they weren't saying Taylor was bad. They were just simply saying, I don't understand this.
Different.
Yeah, that's really great. So, yeah. So let me just check and see. Okay, never paid attention to pop stars, so I'm very interested in what you have to say about Taylor Swift. All I can say is come back. Like I said, it's hurt my head. I've run into Christians who think she's literally owned and operated by the Illuminati. I've run into people. It's just, but it's the thing they say about every huge star. And why is she using certain kinds of imagery? That's important. Let me see who's trying to send me a message here. Someone's trying to send some more money. Let's see. Let's play. This is a group called Bonnie, which means something like balcony or something like that. But that's a very important part of Georgian culture, life on the balconies. And this is a piece from a television show. These guys are a lot more up-tempo than the last couple of pieces we've seen. So give it a listen.
Սիխարուլիտ միցգերսկուլի մասպինձելոթոն կարի սիմղերը մաքսմխի արուլի ոյ նանի նանանա ոյ նանի նանանա ոյ նանի նանի նայնա ճարաշի մի վոլգանա ոյ նանի նանանա ոյ նանի նանանա ոյ նանի նանի նայնա ոյ գանդագանա թատա բարի հաշվեր է բաճի բոնիսա Բոբաս խապրուլա իսի տասղլա շիչացի ռուլի մզիսա Ոյ նանի նանանա Ոյ նանի նանանա Ոյ նանի նանի նայնա Ճարաշիմի վոլգանա Ոյ նանի նանանա Ոյ նանի նանանա Ոյ նանի նանի նայնա Գանդագանա Moj čemsken, moj čočet dolarot Kanta gana, oj nani na 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 Oj nani na 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 Oj nani nani na na Gusi čaki puta putana Oj nani na 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 Oj nani na 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 Oj nani nani na na Dolarot kanta gana Oj nani na 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 Oj nani na 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 Oj nani nani na na Gusi čaki puta putana Nani na na na, oh nani na na na, oh nani nani na na, oh kanda kanda, oh nani na na na, oh nani na na na, oh nani nani na na, oh kanda kanda.
Right now, we were talking about pop star, and my question to you was going to be: have you seen anything as big as Taylor Swift? Michael Jackson.
When I was young, the Beatles were hugely popular, and the girls screaming at the Beatles concert in the Shea Stadium, which was next to LaGuardia Airport in New York City, were so loud that literally you couldn't hear a plane go directly over the concert. And it was the same kind of thing that you see. I recommend the video for anyone who's interested in where we are culturally, because you're sitting there going like, my goodness, what is going on here? It really made me start to dive into it, because I said, this is something different. At the same time, there have been lots of concerts, and lots of people, like Beyonce just has a new concert video. But Beyonce feels a bit older, and she is a bit older. But it doesn't, I think her audience is a little bit different than Taylor's. And what Taylor is doing is getting all the teenagers, as well as the 20-somethings and lots of other people. It's a very particular kind of scene. Is it, have there been bigger concerts? Yes. But really, when I watched the concert, the first thing I saw at the beginning of the concert, she comes on and I'm just sitting there saying, she's a god. And she knows how powerful she is. And just at the minute she says that I said that to myself, she comes on and says, you are making me feel so. And I've got this clip because I put my camera up in the auditorium. And she goes, you're making me feel so powerful. And there really is something. But I think what really got me going on this whole thing was I mean, I was aware of her. I have several of her files on my computer. But now I've got albums. Now I'm saying, okay, we're diving in. We're going in. Cover me. Just like, I don't know what I'm going to get into. And evidently the Swifties, her fans, are notorious for kind of going up against anyone who says anything negative about her in radical ways. So
the first group that I was aware of on the internet that were of fans of pop star that would do that, would attack anyone that says anything with the beehives, where they were notorious for just defending Beyonce at any cost.
Yeah.
But I think Taylor, I watched Cassidy did two video breakdown on Taylor Swift, because it feels everyone's looking at what's going on.
Yeah.
And she pointed to the fact that Taylor Swift made a conscious decision to become more political,
right?
Not necessarily in her albums, but certainly in her activism. And
but it's shown up in her albums as well. And there's a documentary called Taylor Swift Miss Americana. And I watched that, and then I realized, the whole point of the documentary, of which they got permission to follow her around, was her announcing that I'm no longer not only am I not just a pop star anymore, but I'm no longer in any way connected with most of that stuff from my past, which I would argue, you are, but in different ways. But we'll get there. We'll talk about that. But yeah, it's strange. No, the thing that got me thinking about it was I watched a speech she gave at New York University, a kind of valedictory speech. She was honored as an honorary doctorate. And I watched this and I said to myself, jeepers, this woman, she was so poised, came across so intelligently, in a way that, for instance, most of the presidential candidates for the last few years have not. And I said, this girl could easily...
All the prime ministers.
Yeah, exactly. She could easily become the president of the United States. I don't think she's going to try to do that right away. But I said, and that would make it really hard for anyone to beat her. And she would bring with her a good chunk of the woke agenda. And with the Swifties, that really creates a really strange, we've never had a president come into office with a legion of dedicated
followers.
Yeah, hardcore fanatics, the longer version of the word. And so I think that is, that's the thing. I'm going to quote from that. I have the video clips of that. And so it's going to be a major thing. And the reason I'm doing it on December 13th is because that's her birthday. And she is so superstitious. I thought, might as well go with the superstition.
Symbolism happens.
But, I have the feeling that video will be found more than a lot of other videos, simply because there are so many videos on Taylor Swift, and all of them have thousands and thousands and thousands of views. Not that everything that is about Taylor Swift does, but but it's a thing. I don't consider it so much of a musical phenomenon as I do kind of an extra musical phenomenon, because it's all about her. All her music is about her.
And in fact, extra musical phenomenon.
Yeah, if she's a goddess of something, it's the self. It's the idea of the self. Another movie I consider to be a pantheon of gods is Woodstock, which is the only movie which is more successful as a concert film than her film. And if you look at just the figures, you won't see that, because this was 1970 money.
Adjusted for
But-
inflation, yeah.
Yeah, but when adjusted, Woodstock's twice as big. But Woodstock, it's like you see Jimi Hendrix. He's like the god of electrical power. When you watch Joe Cocker, the god of insanity. When you watch Joan Baez, the god of social justice. Whereas Taylor just comes out and those are all gods of something in the pantheon of the 60s. Whereas Taylor is just the goddess of the self. And it's herself. And the message to everyone is you should be yourself, but in a sense, what they're doing is becoming her.
I'm curious about your process of, because I can only imagine how many projects you think, oh, this would be a good thing to do a video.
Oh, yeah.
How do you decide which one like rises to the top and the more pressing ones?
Part of it is, like, for instance, I should be finishing up the Cute and the Creepy series, but it was thinking about that made me think more I need another channel. Because I said, more people need to find this, and they're not going to find it with the way I do videos. The algorithms want you to put out a lot. So they will promote you. If you have 1,000 views, they will promote you so you get 2,000 next time. But what I do is I put out a video that maybe gets 1,000, 1,500 views, and the next one maybe 300. And then I'll put out one that gets 500, then another one that gets 700. And we're talking about within the first couple of weeks, because it doesn't matter to the algorithms after that. And there's a lot. And what I'm probably going to do more of on this channel, like I say, once I get this thing off my head, then I'm going to, my first thing on the list is finish up the Cute and Creepy series. But right now, this has to get done. So that's how it is. Meanwhile, on this channel, what I'm going to do is I do have to do some stuff on my other channels, although the only ones that really matter right now are the Anadrome and although I do have to put some stuff on Georgian Crossroads, the Anadrome and the Anadromous. And the Anadromous, I'm going to do more videos like the one I did on stories and the one I just did on the arts. Kind of general, kind of musings about stuff. Whereas the Cute and the Creepy takes a lot of work because, I have to sit here and look. One of the interesting things I was talking about the other day is that a lot of people, I was surprised to realize where Mickey Mouse actually came from. And Mickey Mouse is actually the first major figure culturally that we can call cute in the modern sense. Because he starts off looking more like a rodent with more of a pronounced nose and stuff. But by the end of the 1930s, he's got the rounded face, the really big eyes, and that's the Mickey Mouse that is the originator of this cute thing. But what I realized is I'm sitting there saying to myself, I've been really thinking about where did all these big eyes come from? And there's big eyes in the past, in the ancient world, and you find these strange sculptures and stuff, but they're never cute. They're always, the big eyes were like the mystery of the idol or something like this. But I suddenly said, I know where it comes from. I've been studying this. I don't know if you saw my lecture that I gave that I put visuals to, the most taboo music in America, minstrel music, blackface minstrel music.
Yes, I did, yeah. And
that's
talking
where
about the history of
Mickey Mouse comes from. He comes from the coon art, because there's all these big images, and the gloves are the same as like Al Jolson wears. And in fact, I picked up a whole book on the subject because I wasn't the first person to come up with this idea. Interestingly enough, though, the book seems to be written by someone trying to prove that everything in America is racist. So there's Mickey Mouse. But I'm sitting there saying, no, that's not what it proves. What it proves is, what is minstrel music? Minstrel music is a commercialized form from, it is, in fact, as far as I can see, the first really, truly commercialized form. Because in my thinking, to commercialize something is to take something like the kind of hamburger you would make at home and then make it standardized and then sell it through McDonald's or Burger King or somebody. And so that you get this repeatable project. So it's the imitation. it's using, for instance, the central ingredients that you can make to get people to salivate. So be oil, sugar, salt. Just get something with those. Get some oil.
I'm so happy you reminded me of that video, because I do remember watching it, and I've been thinking that was what I'm thinking, that you were detailing the origins of pop music and tracking it all the way back. Yeah, I need to go back and watch it. That was another brilliant video. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that one I purposely don't go out of my way to promote that, because I know if the wrong people ever find that, they're going to go like, "Wait a minute, what's he doing here?" Because the conclusion is, you can't just erase this stuff, because so much of the music that people liked all the way through the 20th century is based on the black and white tension in America with, you had other elements come in, German or Italian or, Jamaican or whatever, come into the mix. But the real tension is between the white and black in America. And by a secondary extension, white and black in the Anglosphere. And Jamaica fits in very well too, because there's a tension white and black, and so reggae music is actually it also has many of the same elements of this tension between the European song structure, but the African elements. But in America, they are the most severely in Latin America. They left the African elements in the air, because the Catholics, Spanish and Portuguese, looked at the black slaves as being more like little children, and it didn't matter. Whereas actually the Protestants originally in America looked at the slaves, well, there's two kinds, but they started off looking at them as humans who shouldn't be worshiping those gods. So they wanted to eliminate as many elements of African music as they could, when what they ended up doing was whittling it down to its basic structure. And so you have the different elements of like syncopation, the beats. You have the blue note, which is a bit different than you find in most European countries. And Leonard Bernstein explains it as being somewhere between two notes in ours, which is what you get in jazz chords on a piano. There's also more of coloration, so that the vocal structure, like if you listen to someone like Howlin' Wolf, or there's that guy Froggy Landers, these guys sing way down here, which no European would do stuff like that, except there is some people in Corsica who try to imitate their goats when they sing. So,
I'll achieve that.
You have the coloration, and then what's most important is you have the call and response pattern. And what I'm going to say when I get to the gospel music is, the reason the call and response pattern is still there and wasn't scrubbed out by the Protestant overlords is because they were actually using it themselves. So at the end of the 19th century, there were these revival meetings. They hadn't quite got to the point yet where they were the vicious racist of the Ku Klux Klan. This actually was developed by the fact that you had another side, the abolitionist. And the more the abolitionists pushed, the more the Southern people had to develop a doctrine of absolute racial inferiority, which they didn't have in the same way in the 17th century, but in the middle of the 18th century. So there's and so what I'm going to do is play for you the survivals of these old call and response patterns, which we have recordings of, because in Scotland and in the Appalachian Mountains, you have groups who are still doing the style from 300 years ago. And, and then you play the black version of it, and you realize, wow, that's actually very similar with some major exceptions. And the major exceptions are, if the white church is singing the song like this, the black group is singing it off the rhythm. They are naturally doing that. They're also adding more kind of odd vocalizations to it. But basically they're doing the same thing. And Thomas Sowell makes this whole case, and this is a good proof of that case, where actually the black culture was borrowing from this kind of weird Scottish culture. in America, because, you know, obviously in Nigeria, and this is one of the things that nobody understands very well, but Nigerians come to America, and I used to meet them in America, and they would figure out how to become economically successful very quickly, whereas the Black Americans, the rest of them, the guys who lived in Harlem and such, did not. There was just too much broken down in the culture, and there's too much fatherless children and things like that. Not that it was all like that. And in fact, one of the really interesting things is in the 1950s, the Black family was more cohesive in America. And it only really started to disintegrate when drugs came in, and drugs were brought in by the mafia. So,
and that's how it's really interesting. That part of Black history where the drugs came in was captured so well by a lot of the rap music of the 90s. Because they were made by the children of they were the product of
exactly. It starts in the South Bronx. And I remember moving to New York City in 1980, and the South Bronx was like a war zone. And there were people people were burning their buildings down to collect the insurance money. And I had a friend who was from the remnants of the Jewish community near Yankee Stadium in the South Bronx, and he took me on a drive through it. And I remember we'd pull up to certain places, and people would start coming up to us, and they didn't look like they thought maybe we wanted drugs or something like that. But it was a difficult ride. But at the same time, you don't get the same vibe in the middle of the 1950s. I mean, yeah, there are drugs and such, but it's not the big influx, particularly the hardcore drugs, that you find by the end of the 1950s. And part of it was that mafia members were always looking for new areas to exploit. And that was a new area. Oddly enough, another new area was gay clubs.
Oh.
They are responsible for the gay bars. Because they said
the mafia, really?
Yeah. There's a hidden history.
I would like
there.
To see that's Scorsese movie about.
There's a whole hidden history here, and there's also, for instance, in New York City in the middle of the 90s, I knew all these they wouldn't be called hipsters because they were far too edgy. Hipsters generally aren't that edgy, but I have a friend there who she would perform next to nude, her body painted red. She would stand, on her legs upside down with her legs spread out, and someone would be cracking paint-filled eggs over her legs. And she, as well as many other of the scenesters, is probably the best way to call them at that time, all had jobs working as dominatrixes, which, of course, is a whole mafia-run thing. So there's this weird sense of collusion. I think when someone finally can write a history of those times, they will realize, wait a minute, this group, like the mafia was behind poker machines. And the mafia was always involved with pinball games. And they were involved with, the most important thing, slot machines. But here's the thing. Who is controlling the gaming industry? And I'm just sitting there going like, I can't imagine. With all the other machines they had, they controlled the arcades. I can't imagine they let the entire gaming industry slip out from under them. Because it's completely in line with all these other things they owned. And when I see, you've seen those ads for Raid Shadow Legends.
Yeah.
And they always talk about you get the new heroes with this game, and you get extra gold and such. Because the game is actually free to begin. It's so much mafia aesthetics because it's exactly like you start to play the game, and then for you to get anything, you really got to, you got to pay. So
pay to play.
Yeah, and it was the same in the porno world too. They used to have these booths where people would go in and watch girls do whatever, and they would. This weird, you'd see this in some movies like Paris, Texas. They would have this metal thing that went up, and behind the glass was a woman who you could instruct to do anything. But before, you had to keep putting money in all the time or else it would go down. It's the exact same way that the video games work.
Video games, yeah, that's the thing.
Yeah, so there's a whole weird thing here that people don't understand. Right. So let me play a Georgian song, and while you're doing that, you can decide if you want some of this music for yourself. And we'll be back in a moment, and I'll give you some thanks. Because money. Yeah, well, I will be back, so keep looking for me. I'll be doing this until I get the $12,000. So I've got a lot of work to do, probably through December. So let's go here. All right, so there we are, and then there you are, and then so 12-hour stream. Let's go. Yeah, Professor Luigi, if you want a 12-hour stream, I would do it for $1,000. So if you said
money
$1,000 and I'll take all the Georgian music CDs, but okay. So Michael, you'll take every one of those 100 Georgian music files. You will be getting them. It won't be immediately because I'm going to have to see how many I send out, but you will be getting them through WeTransfer, which I will send you a note when I send them to make sure that they don't get lost in your junk mail. Thanks, Michael. I really appreciate that. A whole shelf on your bookcase has Rookmacher, Alul, and Percy. That is really heartening. So thanks. I appreciate that. So, yeah. I think it's about time to get going. If anyone has any last-minute donations if you're trying to keep me here, that would be a good way to do it. And let me look over here at this. I'm pretty happy. I think we brought in 1, 2, 3, close to around $300 on this, which is not bad. Although I need to get in touch with some of the people I know have, shall we say, deeper pockets. But I appreciate it all because the nice thing about doing this is this connects me. I mean, if someone just turned around and gave me the $12,000, which I wouldn't say no to, but this process is great because we're getting to know each other, and other people can come on and talk like Tayo is. Tayo, I really appreciate you being here. It's been enjoyable to talk to, and find me again sometime here. I'll be doing this for a while, it looks like. But yeah, thanks. And well, thank you. I'm going to turn this off. I'm going to say goodbye to you right now. Thanks and farewell.
Thank you.
A people without history is not redeemed from time. For history is a pattern of timeless moments.